Hi, I'm Amy Burton, and I'm with Amy Burton Counseling. I'm a therapist in Overland Park, Kansas, but I'm also a mom of 6 children, ranging in age from 17 down to 8. So, before we start this parenting course, I want to offer a disclaimer. I am not here to tell you how to raise your kids. The purpose of these videos and of this course is not to pretend that I know your kids better than you do. I am simply here to offer you the latest research and some common themes that I hear from my adolescent patients, and also my own ideas and insights coming from both my roles as a therapist and a mom. Being a parent is by far the hardest job I have ever had. Do you remember back to when your oldest child was a newborn, up all night with a crying baby, feeding issues, trying to figure out what they need? I remember thinking that I was going through the hardest possible time of my life. What could be harder than pregnancy, childbirth, and a newborn? Well, if you're anything like me, you've learned that that colicky little newborn was nothing compared to raising a teenager in the 21st century. I clarify the 21st century because I truly believe that there hasn't been a more difficult time in our history to raise a teenager than now. So for this week, we're going to talk about connection versus correction. So do you remember back when your kid was just in love with you? I can remember when my son was about 4 years old, and he used to collect his sister's little plastic rings so that he could propose to me. So he went through this phase when he would regularly get down on one knee with a plastic ring in his hand and ask, "Will you be married to me, Mommy?" And I would act surprised and elated, and I'd exclaim, "Oh, yes!" And he'd put the ring over my first knuckle and leap into my arms, and he'd say, "Oh, thank you, Mommy, for being married to me." Well, at the time, I thought there was nothing that could ever diminish that connection that we had. But you know what? So now when I've gone back and asked him if he remembers all those times he proposed to me, he doesn't at all. In my mind, it feels like it was last summer, but in reality, it was about 9 years ago. Do you remember when your child was between 3 and 10 years old and you could set up play dates for them? So you could basically just choose their friends, right? By just ordering up their schedule. So you just set up play dates for them with kids that you approve of, and you're golden. Parenting was so much easier back then. Well, now we have teenagers. And so if you guys are anything like me, there are times when you feel completely disconnected from your child. So let's talk about what might be happening. So according to Michael Riera, all parents get fired by their kid as the manager of their life. Okay, let me say that again. All parents get fired by their kid. You might be thinking, no, you're not going to fire me, but this happens. You've probably noticed it, and it happens in multiple ways depending on the kids, but at some point, all kids will fire you. I'm talking like a teenager. So preteen, early teen, they'll come to a point where they just don't want to hear your advice. They don't care what you want to say. They want you to get out and leave them alone. So if you recognize yourself getting fired, first thing I want to tell you is that it is normal and it happens. But don't worry, because I can help you get rehired. There's just one catch in getting rehired. You cannot be rehired as their manager, or as I like to say, their momager. You cannot be rehired as the momager. But you do have 3 other choices. Let's talk about those. So the first choice, when you recognize you've been fired by your kid as their manager, the first option is you can quit. You can just quit. So do you guys know parents who just quit parenting? It's like they've decided to just give up. They don't help their kids. They don't have a relationship with them. They just seem to sort of coexist in the same house together, like they're just waiting until their kid turns 18 to kick them out. I bet you know people like that. I know people like that. They just kind of quit. So option number 2 is that you can be the cool mom or the cool dad. I don't know if you guys have seen Mean Girls, but there's a part where she says, "I'm the cool mom. I'm the cool mom." So these parents that are particularly concerned with being cool to their kids, they don't give their kids a curfew. These maybe are the parents who buy alcohol for their kids, and they might tell their kids if they're going to smoke weed, then at least smoke it at home. So they're the kind of parents who will get a hotel room for their son and his date for a prom night. That's the cool mom or the cool dad parent. So let's talk about option 3, which you may have guessed it would be my preference. So option number 3 is you can be rehired as your child's consultant. So a consultant is there to listen to you when you need an expert opinion. Consultant helps you think about what you might choose to do. I like to use the verbiage of walking alongside your teenager or your child through adolescence. I like the visual of that, of literally sort of walking alongside. So you're not in front of your kid, pulling them along, like follow along with what I say and do, and just be a good follow, what your parent says. And you're not standing behind your kid, pushing them into activities or pushing them to achieve things that maybe they don't care about, but you're just walking alongside with them. There's walking alongside. And I like that. I like the thought of that, and I like the visual of that. We must switch from a manager role to a consultant role. We must do that when we have a teenager or maybe even a preteen. Now, this isn't about completely taking a back seat in their life. It's actually about interacting strategically with them. Some parents are going to struggle to adjust to the demands that parenting their child through the teenage years brings. It's a time that can put even the strongest and most loving relationships to the test. But your child actually needs you at this time just as much as they have always needed you. They just need you in a different way. You'll have to shift out of that consultant role if their health or safety is at risk. In times like this, it can be ugly. In these hopefully rare times when you actually have to put your foot down, you'll be coming out of that consultant role and having to briefly manage again. If done wrong, these times can cause a serious rift in your relationship. But if done right, they can actually be therapeutic. So let's talk about what it looks like to be a consultant who walks alongside their teenager. So I'm going to give you some thoughts, ideas about what exactly that looks like. Walking alongside your teenager means, first of all, means being present. So you have to find times that you don't have to work. There have to be times when you're home and when you're with your kid. I can't, and even in those times when you are with your child, say at home or you're doing something, take them out to a restaurant or something, in those moments when you're actually together and present, you've got to put your phone down. I cannot tell you how many times I talk to teenagers in my office who say they wish their parents would put their phone down while they're talking to them. It's sad, actually. You hear parents complain about their kids having their phones out all the time. I hear so many kids talk about their parents having their phones out all the time. Nothing tells your teen that you are literally not there for them, like being glued to your cell phone. But even more than physical availability, your child will sense your emotional availability. Parents who have a close relationship with their teens often say that as their teen has gotten older, they've made it a practice to drop everything else if their teenager signals a desire to talk. This can obviously, it's dangerous. This can be, or not dangerous, it can be difficult if you have a demanding job, if you have other responsibilities, if you have other children that you are caring for as well. But kids who feel that other things are more important to their parents often look elsewhere when they're emotionally needy. If you want your teenager to open up to you and rely on you emotionally, you have to let them know that you're available to them. So another idea is that walking alongside your child isn't walking against them. So what I mean by this is to be on your kid's side and remind them when needed, hey, I'm on your side, or you know what, I'm on your team. So don't make things hard for your kids. You don't have to be this gruff authoritarian to be a good parent. On the contrary, be on their side. Assume the best in them. Although sometimes you have to verify information, but for the most part, and as often as possible, show them that you just aren't against them. Another thought is to say yes as much as possible. So my friend and fellow therapist David Robbins, he encourages parents of teenagers when a teenager will ask their parents if they can do something. He encourages parents to say, tell me what I need to hear to be able to say yes. What that means is, tell me where you're going, who are you going with, who's driving, is your homework done, are your chores finished, when will you be back home, things like that. What exactly are you going to be doing? So when you say, tell me what I need to hear to be able to say yes, that means give me all the details. You know what I'm going to ask you. Give me all the details so I can say yes to you because I want to say yes. Sometimes parents who miss the mark in that situation, when a teenager says, can I go do whatever? Parents who miss the mark will say things like, are you kidding? I know you haven't done your chore. I know you haven't done this or that. But your grades are blah, 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 blah. Or you can't, I know so-and-so is a bad influence. I know that this person's not good for you. They just kind of assume the worst instead of showing their kid, I want to say yes. Give me all the information I need to know to be able to say yes. Walking alongside your teenager also means just being helpful. So find out what they need for their activities. Or find out what they need to learn how to drive. Find out what they need, if they need your help before going to prom. Just make sure that they have the things that they need and that, you find out what they need and you provide that for them. That they know that you're there, Another point is that you need to be involved. And it almost seems silly to have to say this, but, go to their games. Volunteer to help at their fundraiser car wash, sponsor the choir programs, just show up, show up. We have kind of a motto in our family. I throw out every once in a while. I say, Burtons show up. I say that to my kids when my son doesn't want to go to his sister's, show choir concert, or when our daughter doesn't want to go to her sister's spelling bee competition. So I'll say, well, Burtons show up, which means we all show up for each other. We're there. We show up. We're going to be sitting in the audience for her, just like we're going to be sitting in the audience for you, and we show up. I think it's important for kids to know we, in our family, we show up for each other. We do. We make it a point to be there. 5 little words that you can say that might make a big difference in situations like this. So let's say after a performance or after a game. I love to watch you blank. So on the way home from, let's say, a soccer game, I love to watch you play soccer. I love to watch you play goalie. I love to listen to you sing. I love to watch you swim in these swim meets. So just say that. I love to watch you blank. Tell your kids that and let them know you love to watch. It's important to them, and you're going to boost their esteem and make them feel like you really care. Let me talk about the number one most important part of walking alongside your child through adolescence. So what do you think it might be? The very most important part of walking alongside your kids through adolescence is listening to them, empathizing with them, and keeping your advice to a minimum. It doesn't matter how good your advice is. Every time you offer it, you're giving your teen the message that they can't solve their own problems. Be a sounding board for them, but not a prescriber. If you can accomplish that and master it, you will find your teenager coming back for more. It's imperative, and it's so hard. It is so hard not to give advice to a kid, especially when something seems so blaringly obvious to you, you just need to do it like this, or you just need to do it like that. In times like that, really try to hold your tongue and listen to them and empathize with them and keep your mouth shut as best you can. If you can do that, they will continue to come back. Kids often do not want you to solve their problems. And it's not unlike couples. So if you are married, if you've been married or had a serious relationship, oftentimes, I'm going to be gender specific, oftentimes a woman might be like, she's just talking about what happened, or talking about some problem at work or something. And the man will say, oh, well, you just need to X, Y, Z. And the woman walks away from that kind of ticked off because she didn't need him to solve the problem, right? She just needed him to listen and empathize and validate her feelings. Kids are kind of the same way, especially teenagers. They don't always want you to solve their problem for them. They often would really prefer that you just listen and validate them and empathize with them. Tell them how hard this must be. It goes a long way when you see them more as somebody who needs to be soothed instead of somebody who needs to be fixed. So if you can listen without judgment and then seek to understand their concerns and their challenges, you will be golden. A slightly new topic, let's talk about independence. So let's talk about why you have been fired as your teen's manager. It has to do with being independent. So as children become teenagers, they will naturally crave independence. In fact, it's necessary that they become independent from their parents. So just as necessary as it is for them to become independent, it's necessary for parents to build a bridge of connection with them. We often assume that teenagers who are close to their parents are maybe less independent in their lives, but according to research, that's actually just not true. In fact, young adults who feel that they can share honestly with their parents say that they feel free to make independent decisions and don't feel the need to rebel against their parents' expectations. I'm going to say that again. So young adults who feel that they can share honestly with their parents say they feel free to make independent decisions and don't feel the need to rebel against their parents' expectations. That's pretty huge. It's appropriate for your kids to become increasingly independent throughout their teen years, but it's critical for most of those years for parents to remain their teens' emotional and moral compass. Kids will begin to experiment with intimate relationships outside of the family, friendships, girlfriends, boyfriends, but to do that successfully, they still rely on those intimate relationships at home remaining solid. Do you actually want to know the biggest predictor of how early your child will become sexually active? According to Dr. James Dobson, the closer your child is to their parents, the longer they'll wait. That statistic really spoke to me, because we all want our kids to wait a little longer, right? Or a lot longer. You being close to them and having a close emotional relationship could actually make a pretty big difference. It's important that parents recognize that their teens' fierce need for independence doesn't mean that they can't stay connected to you. It may seem like a bit of an oxymoron, but it's really not. It's them becoming independent but still having a relationship with you. If you can let your teen exercise their own judgment and be themselves rather than to be who you want them to be, they'll be able to grow into age-appropriate independence without cutting you off. But if, on the other hand, you insist that they play the sport that you love, or you insist that they agree with your political views, then your teen will have to choose between a relationship with you and what they feel is really their integrity. Attempting to parent when your relationship is damaged is like pushing a boulder uphill. it's never too late in your relationship with your child to do repair work and to move closer, but it's a whole lot harder to build that strong connection that you want if the foundation isn't there. The influence that you have over your child is more dependent on a trusting relationship than it is on how much authority you dish out and how many lectures you give. It may feel like they're trying to push you away, but they're actually trying to push themselves away from you to choose a direction in life and to shape an identity for themselves as a separate, independent person. So love, support, trust, and optimism from their family make them feel really secure and safe. And those are actually really powerful weapons against peer pressure and depression and anxiety. Those are some of life's, biggest challenges. The basics of supportive parents. So let's talk about, as a supportive parent or as a consultant parent, your aim is to keep your child safe, obviously, and to give them the foundation that they need to do their very best. So at minimum, they need to know that they are loved for who they are and that you are always there for them and you always support them. It's also going to be really important that your teenager feels that you respect them and that you have respect for their friends. You have respect for their clothing choices, maybe for their sports or the type of music that they listen to, maybe their interests. So they need to know that you accept them just the way that they are, even if they like, gangster rap, or even if they are diehard Democrats or, conservatives or whatever that looks like. They need to know that you love them just the way that they are and that you accept them and that you support them. So let's talk about, how do you build that foundation of trust? How do you help your child to actually want to communicate with you? How do you help your child to come to you when things are going on with them instead of going to their friends? So I want to share with you an acronym that I use often in sessions and in my personal life that I have just found really helpful. So the acronym is LOVER with a U. So it's LUVER. The L stands for listen. The U stands for understand. The V stands for validate. The E is for empathize. And the R is repeat until soothed. So let's say a situation. I can give you an example of something that happened a couple of years ago at my house. It's an example I often use in sessions. So my daughter, who has given me permission to share the story with whoever, she came home from school, and a high school student, and she was obviously angry, threw her backpack down and just sort of started ranting about how mad she was that she had gone to school and she had an assignment that was due in biology class, and her biology teacher wouldn't let her, but she left the assignment at home. And so the biology teacher wouldn't allow her to call me to go bring the assignment to her. The biology teacher said, you can't turn it in tomorrow for partial credit. You can't do, unless this assignment's in my hand right now, you just get a 0 on it. She was so mad. She was like, I worked so hard on that, and he wouldn't even give me a chance, and he wouldn't even let me call you. I know you were even home, and you could have just run it up to the school for me real quick, and he just wouldn't even give me a chance. And at that moment, everything inside of me wanted to tell my kid, how many times have I told you to put your assignment in your backpack? How many times have I told you to put your backpack by the front door? How many times have I said blah, 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 blah? That's everything in me was just wanting to, I guess, throw it back in her face. Like, I told you to do it this way. You're 15 now. You should know better. But I didn't do that. I thought about actually what I tell clients in sessions to do, and that's to go through this LOVER acronym. So I started off with the listen part. And so what I did was I obviously listened to everything that she said that I just mentioned, and I asked a few points of clarification, like, um, is this the assignment that I saw you working on last night? You know, do you feel like you understood the assignment pretty well? What was it about this assignment in particular that was so important to you? She said, well, it was worth a lot of points, and she's trying to bring her grade up. So I kind of got some extra, not any questions that would, kind of put her in the hot spot, but just kind of questions of clarification about the situation. And then I went to the U. So the U is understand. And so a statement of understanding would sound like this. It would be, if I understand you right, it sounds like you're saying that you worked really hard on your assignment last night, that you forgot to put it in your backpack, that your biology teacher wouldn't let you call me, or wouldn't let you turn it in tomorrow for partial credit even, and you just got an automatic 0. Did I get that right? And she said, well, yeah, but the biggest part of it was that I worked so hard on it, and he wouldn't even give me a chance. Like, I don't even think he likes me. Like, he wouldn't even give me a chance. And so I said, okay, so if I understand you right, the biggest part is that you worked really hard, and he wouldn't even give you a chance. And they feel like he doesn't even like you. And she said, yeah. So then I went down to the V, which is validate. And I said, honey, this has got to be so hard. And I think, if I were in your shoes right now, I'd be really ticked off too. I can imagine if I were sitting in that class, I would have been disappointed in myself and really angry at my teacher too, because he wasn't even giving me a chance. And I feel like you have every right to be angry about this situation. I think anybody in your shoes would be really angry right now. And then I went to the E, which is empathize. And I said, babe, this has to be so hard. It has to be so hard because you've started off in this new school, and you don't know a lot of people, and it's just got to be really rough to go to, we previously had homeschooled, so to go from homeschooling into a public high school with 2,000 students and, not be familiar with kind of all the rules and the way things go. That's got to be really tough. And, not to be in this habit of, making sure you have your assignments in your backpack. We homeschooled, so having your assignment on the kitchen table was fine for the first, 8 years of your education, and now it's not. And so it's got to be especially hard, just, this transition into trying to remember all the things you've got to remember now that you're in the public school setting, transferring that from a homeschool setting. And she said, well, it's really hard. And you know what else is hard? I was in PE class, and I overheard 2 girls talking about me, saying that they heard that I was making out with some boy. Mom, I've never even kissed a boy. I'm not interested. I don't know who the boys are. They said this name. I don't even know who that kid is. I don't know who these girls are. I hate the school. I never want to go back. So at that point, I repeated. So the next one's R. I went back to the top. And then I listened to what she had to say about that situation. I sought to understand what she said. If I hear you right, it sounds like you're saying. I validated her feelings. I would be so angry or upset too, or I'm sure any teenager in this situation would be upset. And the empathize part, this has got to be terrible, or I know this is so hard. When you go through that, when you truly listen to somebody, seek to understand them, and seeking to understand really proves to them that you heard them, validate their feelings and empathize with them without any judgment. When you do that, they want to talk more. This is a counseling technique. Like, this is a technique that counselors are even taught in a counseling session to help patients to open up and to feel soothed when they're upset. This is something counselors do. You as parents can do the exact same thing. It's not difficult. Go through that, listening, understanding, validating, empathizing, and then repeat as needed. My daughter and I, in that situation in particular, we cycled through that several times, because the more I listened and understood and empathized and validated, the more she wanted to keep talking. And I learned all sorts of stuff about that kid that I didn't know previously, just because I was giving her my time and attention and really actively listening to her and validating her. Um, you know, going back, if in that situation when she came in the house and she was ticked off and mad, if I would have at that moment said, how many times have I told you to put your assignments in your backpack? If I would have blamed her, she'd have stomped off to her room and slammed her door and not talked to me for the rest of the night. I would have cut conversation off right there. She'd probably be crying in her bedroom, angry, probably texting all of her friends about what a terrible mom she has, right? And it would have solved nothing. It just would make her feel 10 times worse, make me feel like I'm a bad mom. And at the end of the day, we've got two people that feel hurt and misunderstood and regretful. Instead, I was able to go through this with her, and I learned a ton from her. I learned a lot of things that I don't think she would have told me otherwise. And it built a bridge of connection between the two of us. And so in that's like the sweet spot, that sweet spot where you and your kid are like this, right? You seeing eye to eye, you understand each other, and she knows that you're there for her, and you can trust that if there's big stuff going on that she's going to let you know. That's such a great place to be. It's so supernatural and super natural, not compound, but two separate words. It's super natural, very natural for your kid to not want to talk, like not want to talk to you if they feel like you're going to judge them. And it's the same for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you. Nobody wants to talk to somebody who's going to judge them, right? We'll just not talk to that person anymore if they're going to be judgmental. That's why it's so important that you just accept your kid where they are and for who they are, and go with the feelings instead of trying to teach them a lesson all the time. Because once you've been fired as that manager, that teaching a lesson part has got to go to the wayside, and you've got to be in a place where you're building a bridge, you're building that connection with them, so that when things happen in their life, you're the one they want to talk to. It's super important, really important that you're available when your kid wants to talk. So there are typically 2 times that a teen is open to conversations. It can be in the car, so if you're driving around in the car with your kid, or it might be late at night. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of in the car. So that's like a side-by-side conversation, right? Typically, and I'm going to be gender specific again, but typically men do a lot of communication side by side. So they might go fishing together, or they will drive in a car together. So maybe like a dad and his son might go on a drive, or go fishing, play video games, something like that, where they don't look at each other, but they're sort of shoulder to shoulder. Oftentimes women will, and you think, to go back a second, even little boys, when they're socialized as little boys, what do they do together? You get little boys together on a play date, they go ride bikes, they go jump in the creek, right? They have an activity that they go and do, and they don't look at each other so much. I mean, they're riding bikes, they're not staring at each other, they're just riding bikes and laughing and talking while they ride bikes at the same time. That's kind of typically, if we were to stereotype, typically the way that boys want to communicate. Girls, on the other hand, will often communicate face to face. So even if you think of like little girls, how do little girls socialize with each other? They have a tea party. They sit together face to face and have their little pretend tea. This is, little girls typically do that kind of thing. They play dress up, and then they sit down and they look at each other. Girls typically will do face-to-face communication and feel most comfortable face-to-face. Boys will often feel most comfortable side-by-side. So I'll go back. What I was saying is that there's typically 2 times that a teen is open to communication. Sometimes in the car, they will be, or it might be like late at night. Have you ever heard of the term late night confessions? So most teens are more likely to open up late at night and maybe over a snack. So it might be worth a nap or even setting your alarm for midnight to specifically be awake during the time when your teenager actually might be open to talking. This idea of late night confessions, it's like when the sun goes down or when it's late at night, people sometimes open up and want to talk. Your teenager might very well be like that. And so if you want to sort of get in on what's going on in their life, being available late at night when they're still awake might be helpful, might be worth a shot. You might be amazed at how much more your teen will open up late at night. But keep in mind that nothing is going to make them clam up faster than if you're pressing them to talk. If they feel like something's up, if they feel like you're maybe overly attached to the idea of them opening up to you, then they will totally shut down. So you have to find ways that you can be in proximity where you're both potentially available without it seeming like a big demand. So obviously you don't want to go sit down on their bed and be like, so what are you doing? What's up? Let's talk. Don't be weird. Just be available. So if they're on the couch watching TV, you might get up and what are you watching? And sit down and watch it with them and see if they want to open up. Being available, spending time with them is imperative. You can't have a relationship with someone that you don't spend time with. I'm sure you've heard it said before that, kids spell love, T-I-M-E. They really do. They want your time. They want your time and attention. Now let's say in that situation, you get up, you're, in the midnight, your kid's sitting on the couch watching The Office or something on TV or on their computer. If they actually do start to open up or talk to you about something, that is when you just want to listen. Just listen. Be available. You can go through that lover if you need to. Just listen. And you might ask questions. Type of questions that you might ask are not the type of questions that Johnny Cochran would ask, okay? They're the type of questions that just show a curiosity. So it might start with, I wonder why blank. I wonder why Samantha broke up with Travis. I wonder why your teacher would say that you have a 50% on a paper that was really good. I wonder why, blah, blah, blah. So maybe just asking questions and being sort of curious about things. When you're sort of curious about something, you're not super attached to it. You're just, I wonder. That's it. It's a good way to kind of jump in and say something if you want to. Otherwise, just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. Another idea is that it's just really important to let your kid be themselves. And part of that is letting your teenager own their own stuff. So, for example, your teen is still maybe learning rules of grooming or maybe experimenting with a new identity every week. It's really important that you just kind of let them be them and let you be you. Have some sort of a separation from them on that type of stuff. If you think your son would look better with his hair off his face, or you think your daughter might look better if she wore a different color lipstick, if you think your son needs to wash his face more often, be sure any sort of suggestions are made super tactfully and maybe only once. So if you are continually telling your daughter, you really need at least a little mascara. If you're continually telling your son, I just really don't like your hair that way. If you say it more than once, your teen is going to perceive that you reject them, that they're not good enough for you. And that's not a good place to be. Another idea is that, to foster a good relationship with your kid, you want to really welcome your teen's friends into your home or to come along with you to do things. You want your teenager hanging out at your house, right? Keep snacks available, keep pizza rolls in the freezer. Just make sure that your teenager's friends know they're welcome at your house. When they leave your house, tell them, hey, I'm so glad I got to see you. Come back soon. I hope you come back soon. I can't wait to see you again. Just be friendly and kind to their friends. That's going to be really important, and it might actually foster their friends saying, hey, let's go hang at your house. Your mom has all the good snacks, maybe, but be in a position where you have their friends over to your house often and you keep the environment such that they want to come back. Here's another idea. Keep a healthy perspective on their perhaps poor grades or lack of achievement. So if you have a kid who needs academic help, let them know that you're available or that you're willing to obtain any and all resources, tutors, whatever they need to get the help that they want. Do not hound them daily about their grades or their lack of achievement. Nothing feels as depressing as a parent who doesn't approve and is disappointed. Nothing will kill your relationship with your child faster than if your child's failure or their failures are a topic of conversation that you regularly bring up. Remember, you're a consultant. Be available if and when they need your help in whatever way that you can help them. Another idea is just to praise their effort instead of the end result. What I mean by this is that parents should be much more concerned with the time and attention that their teenagers put into a project than what the final grade actually was. So, especially in circumstances where your child has put a lot of effort into, like, let's say an assignment, but didn't get the grade that they were hoping for, that's when you need to praise their effort doubly because they aren't getting that from their teacher. So focus on their character, focus on character traits over grades every time. So focusing on what a hard worker they are is so much more important than focusing on a D. I would much rather have a child who's a hard worker and puts a lot of effort into what they do and ends up with a C than one who slacks off and makes easy A's. I would much prefer a kid with great character who's a hard worker. Here's another thought, something else that might bring you together and have closer connection with your kids. Just have fun together. It's essential that you and your teenagers find ways to enjoy each other's company. Since your teen maybe won't necessarily think what you want to do is fun, that means you'll have to pay attention to what they think is fun and join them. Having fun together makes it more likely that your teen will want to talk to you. If you invest the time and invest time into fun stuff with them, they're going to like you. They're going to like you more and want to chit chat with you. My mom's fun. She's fun. My dad's cool. Like, he's fun. We hang out. Not cool like he gives me pot, but cool like, we race cars or do paintball or whatever. Just doing fun things together. In these fun times, do not bring up that last fight you had with them. Do not bring up their grades. Do not bring up that friend of theirs that you wish they would dump and get away from. Do not bring up that they haven't done their chores all week. Don't bring up the bad stuff. If you're having fun time with your teenager, then it's fun time and you're sticking to the things that really matter. At the end of the day, what really matters is that you and your teenager have a connection, that the two of you are like this, and that you have a strong relationship with each other, that that no matter what happens, that you're there for them and they know that you are. It's important. Another idea is that you want to place a premium on relationships in your family by spending some time together every single day. So whether it's just 5 minutes at bedtime or when they come home from school for 10 minutes, just want to make sure that you have time to connect with your teenager every day. If your teenager is resistant to spending time with you, develop some routines where you can share something that your teenager enjoys doing. So maybe you have a ping pong table that they like to play ping pong, you like to play ping pong, or maybe you have have a cup of tea together every night, or you take a walk on Monday evenings, or maybe there's a TV show that you both enjoy watching. Get into Gilmore Girls or something, and you don't watch it without her, and she doesn't watch it without you. Just some kind of way that you have a regular routine of the two of you spending time together doing something that's just the two of you, just together. it's important that you have these times set aside. You want to be your child's sounding board. It's really important too. So, if you're a good listener, your teenager will share his or her problems. Your teen doesn't want you to step in and solve their problems. We talked about that, but that they don't want to feel like they're incompetent or too dependent on you. What they need is for you just to listen, ask a few good questions so that they can sort out how they feel and think about the best solutions. And they'll leave that conversation just feeling so much closer to you. Another one is that you just want to ask your teenager how their day was every day. Teens can be really guarded, but just simply asking about how the school day went will just show that you're interested in them. However, you want to be really specific in the way that you ask this question. So let's talk about the wrong question, which is, how was your day? Don't ask your kid, how was your day? Because what are they going to answer? Fine, right? It was fine. That's what they're going to say, fine. And that's not what you're looking for. So you want to ask them questions that are open-ended versus closed-ended. Closed-ended questions are going to result in an answer of yes or no. So, did you have a good day? Yes or no. You want to don't ask questions like that end in a yes or no. It's a closed-ended question. You want to ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions need more information than just a yes or a no. How did your biology test turn out? That would be a good question, because they're going to have to answer with something more than a yes or a no. Who are you eating lunch with these days? That's a pretty good question. How did that thing turn out with Samantha and Travis? That's a pretty good question. It also shows that you were listening to them when they talked about Samantha and Travis in the middle of the night last week or whenever it was. So ask the kinds of questions that are open-ended that are going to get them to give you more information. Lastly, something that's so important to me, and hopefully it's important to you as well, is I want you to hug your kid every day. Now, some people are kind of weird about hugs. Hopefully your teenager will allow you to hug them. And if you haven't hugged your kid in a long time, then you might want to ask for it first, but just to say, hey, would you be comfortable with giving me a hug tonight? That can go a whole long way. Physical touch is so important. I often hug clients at the end of a session here. Not always, but people that are open to it, I always ask first. But so many adolescents that I talk to have told me, you're the only person that hugs me. Like, I get one hug a week, and that's from you. I just think it's sad. But I know on the flip side, on the mom side of that, sometimes it can be hard, especially if you and your teenager are having a rift or things aren't going very well for you. You may not want to hug them, or they might not dare let you get close. So if you can try to get into a habit of hugging them every day, it's really important. Letting them know that you love them, letting them know that you're there for them, just that physical expression of love and hugging your teenager might really make a difference in helping you connect with them. I think it's really important, and might help build that bridge of connection with them. Hope you enjoyed this first video in our parenting course, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.